I'm Jana with Purl Together, and I'm here today with Heidi. Pronounce your last name for me, because I'm pretty sure I've gotten it wrong several times.
Kirrmaier.
So Heidi has fantastic designs on Ravelry. Like, you have a lot on Ravelry. You've been doing this a while.
I've been around a while, yeah, sort of from almost the beginning of Ravelry, which is why I started. Yeah, I wouldn't have done it without Ravelry, because that gave a platform for this stuff, right? Which I think goes for lots of independent designers that sort of started back then, right? So
yeah, absolutely. I remember when Ravelry first started, and you had to like send your request to be added, and then you'd like wait and check your email and wait because this was 2007 ish.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
I mean, the internet hadn't even been around that long, right?
I remember, we remember when email was new.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm dating myself here. That's all right. That's okay. Yeah, it's fine. So you are in the mountainous area of Canada. You're in Calgary or Edmonton area?
I'm in Calgary. That's where my main home is. I have a home in Kimberley, BC too, which is on the other side of the mountains. But yeah, so Calgary is sort of, it's just east of the Rocky Mountains.
Yeah. And you are a very prolific designer. I'm sure you do other things, but.
Yeah, well, I was working sort of full time in a very different job for about 30 years, and I retired from that in 2017. So I'm sort of retired and now just doing the designing. So not just, but it's actually sort of funny because when I had both things going on, I created a lot more designs than I have since I retired. You know, they say if you want something done, ask a busy person, right? So I was like laser focused on the weekends and stuff when I had, a little bit of time. And now I'm like, oh, well, I can go skiing, or, oh, I can do it tomorrow, or.
Right, because you have more time, discretionary time to do all these other things that you might be interested in as well, like skiing or whatever.
Yeah.
So I know this is like super generic question, but people like to know, people still ask me, like, how did you learn to knit? Were you a child when you learned?
Yeah. My mom taught me and my sisters how to knit when we were pretty small. Like I think I was maybe 5, I was pretty young, but yeah, she taught us all the sort of crafty and then home making stuff, which I actually really appreciate. I think it obviously the knitting thing in particular is a huge gift that is now coming back to me. But yeah, so and then
have you carried on with that throughout your life? Because I remember I learned as a child. I think I don't really remember, but I didn't knit a lot in like as a teenager or as a young adult, and I kind of came back to it later in my late 20s. I kind of came back to it.
Yeah, I yes and no. It kind of came and went, but I did actually, when I think back, I did knit throughout my teens and 20s and 30s. And it was all kind of in private, right? Because it wasn't cool. I really didn't know anybody else who did it. And there was no internet where you could share this stuff and find stuff. And there weren't really great yarn shops or anything, right? So somehow, though, it sort of it was something I always gravitated to when like when I was traveling, when I felt displaced or when I needed some comfort. It was sort of just something I knew I could do, and it was sort of satisfying for me, and yeah, so I think back and I made sweaters for friends and family and myself, kind of, yeah, over the course of those few decades. And I never really used a pattern because, there weren't really the resources.
Yeah, there were just all those vintage. I mean, like I still run across some of my grandmother's magazines, like the really old, kind of scary magazines. Yeah.
Well, the pattern's like that long, right?
And that's it. And they figured they know what it all means. They know what,
Yeah.
My mom and I were talking about that. Yeah, we were talking about that the other day, where now patterns are written like it's pretty well spelled out for you. But back then, like, it was a paragraph about this big, and they figured that you understood what all the abbreviations were.
And the techniques and whatever. It's just like, just do it. Increase until you have. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, but where do you put the increases? They're like, I don't know. Wing it.
But yeah, like I don't even remember using any of those like when I was younger. Like a thing of note, I guess, that my mom also taught me was the concept of gauge, right? So, the certain number of stitches per inch, if you measure that, and you know how many inches you need for your sweater, then you can figure out how many stitches you need.
Right.
So that I mean is a huge foundational piece to any designing, right? And that guided me through all the sweaters that I knit, sort of that I made up for my friends and for myself and whatever.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was so
cool. So I just wrote down a question that I'm going to ask you when we talk about the pattern, because I don't want to forget, and I will totally forget. So
sure.
So from this lifetime of knitting for yourself and your friends and your family and making up patterns, so what did your starting designing, did that happen kind of organically because you'd been making up your own patterns all along anyway?
Yeah, exactly. And part of it was too that my sister knit, and occasionally I wrote patterns down for her. Like if I made something and she liked it, then I kind of like, I mean, it wasn't a full blown pattern the way I would write them now, but
Right.
but I really enjoyed that for some reason. I don't know why, to then think, okay, well, I need to calculate the numbers for her size and then write out enough that she could knit it.
Yeah.
And they worked. Like she did it. Like it was like,
yeah. So you were started by making notes for her, and then she was able to do it.
Yeah. And so that was part of it. And I mean, the turning point, I suppose, was when I posted a top that I made myself on Ravelry that I hadn't used a pattern for, and somebody commented and said, "Oh, that's really cute. If you wrote a pattern for it, I'd totally be interested." And I thought, "Oh, okay, well, maybe I will." And I had actually already written it for my sister.
Right.
So that's it. It took off from there. It's called Buttercup. It's a little short sleeved summer top that it's still a free pattern out there.
Oh, we'll put the link in the video description if people are interested in that.
Yeah.
Sure.
That was my very first pattern. And
wow.
I mean, I didn't really know what I was doing as far as grading really properly. Like I published a lot of updates to that pattern, but it was free, and
that's okay. That's how you start.
Yeah. And it was, I mean, the thing is when you put your stuff on the internet, which now this is just normal, but back then it was kind of a big deal, right? And all of a sudden everybody had access to you like immediately and all the time. And that was a bit scary at first, but
it still is. Just saying.
Yeah.
I hear you. I remember I put the first video up and I was like, oh, yeah.
What have I done? But the flip side is that you get great feedback too.
Yeah.
And people are generally very nice and very helpful and appreciative. So it was actually a big part of my learning is just, getting that sort of direct feedback.
And the affirmation that you totally can do this.
Yeah. And it's kind of, I realized after a while, it's pretty low risk. Like you don't really have anything to lose, it's not, you're not going to hurt anybody. And if you do make a mistake, it's easy to correct and republish. And,
sure.
So, I mean, not that.
Well, yeah. And I just figure, I mean, this isn't the same as a pattern, but I figure if people don't like my content, they can keep scrolling. That's fine. Yeah. Carry on. Go about your business. It's okay. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Because not everybody's stuff is for everybody. I mean, it's fine. It's fine to keep going. That's fine if it doesn't appeal to you. But I will say, your sweater that you're wearing is fantastic. And I'm super excited because I've had feedback where we do these knit alongs and, sometimes I'll pull my patron group and I'll say, what do you guys want to do next? What do you want to have for our next knit along? And people have been really excited at the thought of doing just a simple, top down raglan. This could easily be your first sweater.
Mhm.
And if you want to make it a little more challenging, you could do a different kind of striping technique, or you could just knit it solid. If it's your first one and you don't want the stress of the stripes, then yay. But yeah, people are giving me feedback like, oh, yay, really excited to do this. I've never knit a sweater before. I think I can do it. I'm like, yes, you could totally do it.
That's great. Well, thanks for choosing mine, because I know there is no shortage of basic raglan sweaters out there.
I was thinking about that this morning, trying to remember who it was. One of my patrons, I'm almost sure, because we do a monthly knit night. Well, we have several throughout the month for my patrons, people that support the channel, and we've all gotten to know each other pretty well. And I think it was one of them that ran across your pattern and then gave me the link and like, whoa, maybe we should try this one. And then I looked at it and I was totally, yeah, let's do it. And then Rebecca from Needlepoint Joint, who is one of my favorite yarn stores, she has knit your patterns before and said, oh, they're fantastic. They're really well written. Because I hadn't even looked at the pattern yet. I hadn't read through it yet. And she was like, do it. It's totally well written. Just do it. It'll be great. So
that's nice. Thanks. Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely.
I do want to mention something about the pattern, though. I don't know if this is the right time.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So if you bought the pattern, or if people bought the pattern up until yesterday, you would have received 3 different documents to download.
Right. I noticed that. Yeah.
Yeah. The first one is the original pattern, which I published in 2013. And then the second one is an updated version of the pattern published in 2019, which has extra sizes. So I extended the size range.
Right.
And the third document is a supplement to further customize the fit. And I left the original pattern in until yesterday. My rationale was that if you don't need the additional sizes, then you can print the original pattern, which is slightly shorter, and it might be easier to work from. But I think it might be confusing, especially if you're doing a knit along. Everybody should be using the same pattern, I think.
Yes.
And there are other small things that I kind of cleaned up and just, so everybody should just ditch the 2013 version would be my suggestion, and work from the 2019 update. So there's a footer on the documents that say which one it is. So make sure that you're using
So everybody could, if you downloaded like I did, like several weeks ago or a couple weeks ago, if you have those 3 documents, you could just go re-download the one.
Yeah, or just delete the 2013 one and use the 2019 and the supplement haven't changed. So they're the same documents that you have.
Yeah. And so, I want to say, as a larger human, I also have some COVID weight to deal with. However, I'm not a small person to start with, COVID notwithstanding. And I appreciate the size inclusiveness. And that's one reason that we chose it for the knit along, was because there's a ton of sizes. Like, you can make it for anybody. And I think that's fantastic, because not everybody's tiny, and that's okay.
Yeah. And if I may too, just about the supplement. So what it actually does is allow you to shift more room into the front of the sweater than the back. So the basic pattern already has a little bit of that built in, because I think that's fairly typical. As the sizes get bigger, it's often due to the front of the body for female bodies. And with a striped sweater, you can't really introduce short row bust shaping, right? Which is one way that is often used to accommodate more space needed in the front, right? So you can't really do that with stripes without interrupting the stripe pattern.
Right.
So this is one way. It's not exactly the same, but it should help with a better fit for the larger sizes. And
Yeah.
that's the thing with a supplement, you can shift even more stitches to the front relative to the back if you
Oh,
want to.
that's good to know.
So yeah, it's something that you might want to study a little bit and then see whether you want to do it.
Yeah. Those of us that have larger boobage and hormonal belly, whatever. I mean, it's real
Whatever.
life. It's real life. It's
Yeah,
fine.
hopefully you can sort of customize it
Yeah, I
for
think that's
whoever
good.
you need.
That's great. And then my mom, she ordered some extra skeins because she just wants to make it longer. She wants like you know, a bum leg sweater. She just wants it longer. It's great. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Or you could make it really cropped too. You could make it, or with short sleeves, for summer.
I've seen a bunch of projects where people have done, like 3/4 or short elbow length or a T. I saw someone else did just a T. It's awesome. Yeah. So I think that's fantastic. We're super excited. So do you have any specific advice for beginner knitters, maybe? I don't want people to be freaked out that you start the pattern by going back and forth, but that's because of the back and then you join in the round.
Yeah, because to create this scooping, you knit back and forth first. But yeah, I guess maybe a few things. And number one other thing that you'll notice when you look at the pattern is that I use tables for the numbers, and that's something that is not all that common, although I think it's becoming more common, especially with more sizes. So, because if you try to embed all those numbers into the written instructions, it's like I find it really hard to navigate. So, but sometimes when people look at my patterns at first, they kind of get a bit freaked out with the tables. It's like, what are all these numbers and what do I do with them? But just read like line by line, and it'll tell you when to fill in a number from the table. So it's not anything
that big of
more
it.
than that.
Well, and I imagine you could just take what I always tell people to read through the pattern first, just to get the overview, and then go through with a highlighter and highlight your size everywhere.
Yeah.
Very carefully. And if you highlight the wrong size, don't freak out. Get out your whiteout and do it over or print it again or whatever.
Yeah, and hopefully with the tables too, it's much easier, much less likely to make an error when you pick which size to highlight, because it's labeled right there every time. Like you're not thinking, okay, it's now the 5th number in the bracket.
I hate that. The 4th number from the 2nd bracket. I'm like, what? It's hard.
So there's not much of that in the pattern.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
That's one thing, I guess. And people often don't really know what size to pick, especially if that's a sweater that, well, you can totally choose like no ease or lots of ease, basically make it more fitted to your body or super baggy. And how much is really a personal choice, right? And what I suggest people do is get a sweater, like a ready to wear one that you've bought, or if you made one before that you like the fit of, and measure it. Measure it sort of armpit to armpit, laying flat. And then double that, and then that's the
circumference.
And so find the size that comes close to that.
Because if you're like me and if you're home alone and you're like trying to get a tape measure and do the boobs and you're like, it's awkward. It's ridiculous.
Well, yeah. And then, how much ease too. Like sometimes you'd be surprised. Like I like a lot of ease. Like I like an extra 6-10 inches. Like I always have, even back when I started on Ravelry, the thing was negative ease on sweaters, and I was like, I can't do that. Like that's just ridiculous for me. But so that's a bit of advice for just picking your size.
That's wonderful. Yeah, find a hoodie that you already like.
Yeah. But the other sort of a key measurement too is the upper arm circumference. So I'm not going to suggest people try to modify that unless you know what you're doing. Obviously, you can change the proportions, but just make sure you look at that too. Like if you want a more fitted sweater, and the chest circumference you need, if you look at the arm circumference and it's way too big or way too small, you might want to take that into account too, right? Because that is kind of a key. Like every body is different, and I find that's often something people talk about, is that, oh, they have really skinny arms or they have really fat arms,
Right.
Relative, and they always have to adjust patterns. So anyways, that's just something
It's
to,
something to think about. Yeah, you could go and check all those measurements because you do have a good schematic drawing that shows what all the, A, B, C, all the,
all the key
yeah,
fit,
yeah.
components.
Because we looked at that for my mom. She wanted to know what was the length from the back of the neck to the bottom, because like I said, she wants it to be bum length, So my mom often participates in our knit along. She just moved out here to the farm. And so her yarn came with mine. So she's going to do it too. So
Nice.
but she just wants a solid color. She doesn't want to do stripes. I'm like, that's fine. And she'll go rogue. She always does. And then we always complain and argue with each other about it. It's really funny because, she'll like embellish, do what she wants. I'm like, that's fine. You just do what you want. But if you're going to participate in the knit along, you have to knit the pattern. She's like, I can do what I want. I'm like, okay, don't be grumpy about it.
Well, she'll probably start according to the pattern, and then who knows what'll happen. But that's okay. Maybe there'll be.
She's knitted tons of sweaters. I mean, she's in her 70s and has been down this road many times.
Well, that's kind of nice. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's fun. It's a lot of fun. I'm really excited. I have seen so many really neat projects where people have done the 6-row stripes like you're wearing, but then other people have done like 10 and 2 or
a whole bunch of different colors or yeah.
So people have had a lot of fun with that. But what I wanted to ask you, I have a question personally. And I will not do this for the knit along, so people don't need to freak out. Let me have a disclaimer right there. I will not do this for the knit along. But because you're a prolific designer, I figured you would know. If someone wanted to substitute fingering for DK, for example, like I have a lot of my viewers that live in where it's warmer, like they're in Texas or Florida, and maybe they want to knit this sweater with fingering. Could you swatch? Now, in theory, here's my thought process, and then you can tell me how I'm wrong. My thought process is to knit your swatch in the round, because some people have a different gauge when they go back and forth as opposed to knitting in the round. So we will knit our swatches in the round when we begin the knit along. And we'll practice our striping so that you can see how it looks, all that. But what I want to know is if, like, let's say the pattern gauge is 22 stitches for 4 inches or 10 centimeters. So that's 5.5 stitches per inch. But let's say if I knit with fingering, I get 7 stitches per inch. So I have 1.5 stitches more per inch than the pattern calls for. So could I figure that percentage of extra stitches and then just go up a few sizes to match that percentage? Or would that throw off the like row gauge and the whole percent? Would it throw off everything?
So yes and yes. Yeah. So I get this question regularly.
I'm sure. I'm sorry.
No, and it's obviously something, gauge is one of those things it's people have a yarn preference and it may not match the pattern gauge. And anyway, my rule of thumb response is if it differs by no more than 10%, you can do that.
Okay. Okay.
And that's just like, a judgment call. But you're right that you already sort of guessed that if you, simply just knit a different size at a tighter gauge, your proportions are not going to be what the design originally had, right? Because, for example, the neck width from, the smallest to the largest size, it increases a little bit, but not as much as the chest circumference, right?
Oh, right. Okay.
And your yoke depth too, like the raglan section,
yeah,
it doesn't get proportionately deeper as you go wider. It gets a little bit deeper, but not as
Okay, but
much.
not the same rate of increase.
Yeah, yeah. So that's
Okay.
the tricky part about grading, right? I mean,
Yeah.
if that could be done, like grading would be super easy, right? Because you just calculate it once and then scale up or down everything, right? But it doesn't quite work that way. So
Okay, so so if people are thinking that, if viewers are thinking they're going to get away with that, it's a risky thing to do. So maybe not.
I mean, do it at your own risk.
Your mileage may vary.
or I mean, if they are seriously looking at doing that, what you can do is actually recalculate all the different measurements on the schematic, right? So if in your example it's, what was the 7.5, what's
Or
that,
like 7 stitches per inch in fingering as opposed to the 5.5 that the gauge. You would
yeah,
have to figure your row gauge as well then and do that.
yeah. So what you would do then is, okay, say you think you should go up to, say it's the size XL. So if you look at the schematic and you take every measurement on there, and then the horizontal ones you would multiply by 5/7.5.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the amount that it would shrink down to get a smaller size. And similarly, like the vertical measurements, like I think there's only a few given, but again, say the depth of the yoke, whatever your row gauge is, you do the same thing. So you have to apply the proportion, or the
Yeah, the percentage, the difference.
fraction.
Yes.
My mathematical terms are escaping me, but yeah, so you can do that and see, maybe you're happy with how it all scales.
Right.
Maybe you don't mind if the neck is a little bit tighter than the pattern originally was written for. That's fine. So again, it's sort of up to the user if they want to do it. But
it's a risky thing to do.
Well, or you can go in eyes wide open, right? If you go through the exercise of calculating all those things, and again then comparing it to something that fits you well, and seeing whether you're happy with any differences, or
right.
So I wouldn't say no, but I would say just as long as you understand the implications of doing it.
Well, that's true. It's the same kind of thing where people are like, I don't want to swatch. I'm not going to swatch. I'm like, woo, okay then.
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah. All right. Well, just be aware these are the risks.
That's right.
Don't complain too much if you're like, rep. Okay. So speaking of techniques and kind of morphing into that, do you have a specific technique that you would recommend for stripes? Like, do you bother with trying to do jogless stripes, or do you just put the beginning of the round like under here or whatever and you don't care?
Well, I care, but yeah, I've tried the jogless technique, and I personally don't like I don't like the results I get, and I don't know if it's the way I'm doing it, but I find you can sort of see that one stitch is a bit elongated then, even though maybe from a distance it straightens the stripe. But I find I get pretty good results by just managing sort of the tension of the yarn that you're carrying along, and the first couple of stitches that you knit, just make sure that so this is another question people ask sometimes is, do I cut the yarn after every stripe? It's like, well, no, not if you're gonna have colors repeating throughout the sweater. I would suggest you carry it along.
Yeah.
And so let me see, I have actually another straight sweater here that
Ooh.
I don't know if you can sort of see this.
Okay, so you're just kind of twisting them together and on the way up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's your beginning of round.
So every like 2 or 3 rounds, you just twist the colors around each other to carry it. It's a bit like stranded color work, only
Sure.
this is vertical instead of
Sure.
horizontal.
So could you pull that back over here and show us on the right side your beginning of
Yeah.
the round?
Let's see if I'm overly confident about not needing to do a jogless method. Hang on, find that. But yes, when I design, I make sure that the beginning of rounds falls on the side
Okay.
or along the raglan seam, so
Sure.
you really don't see any tiny jogs.
Yeah. That's brilliant.
Okay, so I think we're pretty good here.
Oh yeah. I mean, if you look really, really hard, you can sort of kind of notice
Yeah,
a little, oh
it's
my gosh.
interesting. On the
That's
things you see on
lovely.
the camera, actually, sometimes you see more. Like in real life,
Nobody's gonna notice that.
no, totally. Like there is like,
And you know what we say? If somebody's that close to me, they need to back off. Get
yeah, if they're looking under my arm,
away
that
from me.
go away. But anyways, yeah. So but the I think it is important though to and this comes with practice too, is just getting that tension right. So
Right.
you don't want to have it too tight because otherwise it'll pull up, right?
Mhm.
But you don't want it too loose because then that first stitch is going to be a little bit wonky and you'll
Elongated.
probably see the
Yeah.
beginning, the jog
So
more.
that's also the value of swatching in the round so you can
Yeah,
practice that. The
yeah.
reason, so I'm going to show on this note, I'm going to show, okay, my daughter who is 17, she wants me to knit her. I'm actually going to knit two. One for me and one for her, and the other daughter who's off at college might get one later in the summer, but I can't do that all right now. So um so this is the Berocco vintage DK that I got from Needlepoint Joint, which is my favorite yarn shop. And she picked this dove gray, and I forget what the other one is called. It's snow frosty white something. I don't know, but she wanted this
Okay.
because it's good, it's neutral, it will go with everything, all the
Are you
leggings.
going to do the 6-row stripes?
I think so. I think that's what she wants. So
Hmm.
this will probably be,
That's
yeah.
very nice. Yeah.
So she wanted this. So mine just came yesterday. This is from A Girl in Her Wool, which maybe you know who that is, maybe you don't. But so
I,
this colorway is called
oh, that's nice.
Before the Rain,
I
and
love
that's
that.
just coincidental.
That's beautiful. That's totally up my alley. Yeah, that's beautiful.
And then
Very nice.
yes, so I know it's tonal, and I'm okay with that. And because
Send you my mailing address.
you need to get with Lauren, her website is agirlinherwool.com.
I saw you chatting with her the other day. Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm excited
Beautiful.
about this. And even though it's really tonal, I don't think I'm going to need to like alternate skeins because it's stripes.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be great.
And I'm not sure how I'm going to do my striping yet. I haven't decided. I don't know. And for all the people out there that are saying, oh, I don't want to do horizontal stripes, I'm a bigger person. I'm like, you know what? I've decided I do not care. You wear what you want.
I totally don't see that as an issue at all. Like, yeah, I've seen, look on Ravelry. Yeah, there's lots of beautiful, bigger
People.
people.
And if it makes you happy, then you're going to be confident in wearing it. And I think you just need to do what you want.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, who cares?
All that matters, like you said, is what you like. So,
Yeah. So you mentioned, now I'm going to put you on the spot just a little bit, and it's okay. We can edit this part out. But you mentioned that you might knit it again with us. Maybe.
yeah, maybe.
So
I
people can watch
really,
your Instagram and see if you're gonna.
yeah. But it looks like, I mean, there's going to be a lot of time, right? You're not kicking this off officially until like another month or
Yeah,
so.
May 17th is swatching day because people need time to get their yarn. People just need time for shipping and deciding, and yeah. And I'll put all the links down below where people can get the yarn that I've suggested. But yeah, people need time to plan. And, I don't want it to be a really stressful, like, you got to keep up. Like, we don't do them that way. We do knit alongs like, yeah, we're just going to take it easy. And it's a great round and round top down raglan that's pretty low stress.
Yeah, no, it's great. I mean, heck, maybe I'll have it finished before you start, huh?
That would be fun too.
Yeah, I'm thinking I really want something yellow lately. I don't know. I really like yellow, so it's just like a spring color, and it's like it literally is blizzarding outside right now, and I'm thinking, yeah, I'm done. I'm done with that.
I know, I'm about over it. I'm over it this year. I'm done with it. And I like winter. I really do, but I'm about done this year.
Yeah, I mean it's plenty long, right? And spring here is not pretty at all. Like it's just brown and yeah,
I know. Same here. I know. We both live on the eastern side of the Rockies, and then there's the prairie, and it's brown until all of a sudden it's green.
yeah,
And you're like, oh, finally.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I imagine it's not that different. Oh yeah.
So you're considering knitting a brighter colored version?
Yeah, like I grabbed some of these.
Ooh.
I mean, all of these look great together, I think.
Yes.
But I don't know. It might be 2 or 3 or 4 of these. But yeah, I really like this kind of zesty. But I really like this pink too. So.
And what yarn is that?
This is actually the same yarn that I knit the first one with. It's Elizabeth Levald Hempathy.
Yep.
It's a blend of hemp, cotton, and modal, which is like a rayon, I guess. Okay. And yeah, it's actually been one of my go-to yarns for like warm weather knits for a long time. I really like linen, but it tends to bias, unfortunately. So this yarn is actually more stable and it doesn't bias, and it comes in like a huge range of colors. So I've got quite a bit of it, which is kind of what I tend to do when I find something I like. I kind of stock up. So yeah, as I think we all sort of understand, right? So yeah,
wonderful. Yeah. So yeah, we'll watch your Instagram and see if you decide to do.
Yeah.
Is there a specific hashtag that you want us to use for, or should we just do after the rain sweater cowl? Or
I think in the pattern I suggest what I'd like you to use, which I think is just hashtag after the rain sweater.
Okay.
And that's I think what's been used at least by some people on Instagram that you can find otherwise.
Yeah.
If you want to put the cal at the end so you can find each other.
Oh yeah, maybe. Well, we'll do both. We'll do both.
Yeah.
Why
you
not?
can use as many as you want, right? So yeah, that'd be fun. I'll be watching too, and yeah, for sure. If you have any questions, just let me know.
Oh yeah, and I wanted to say too, you have a Ravelry group where you have categories for your patterns if people have specific questions, certainly. Yeah, so if people want to join your Ravelry group, I'll put the link to that down below as well as, and also where people can find you on Instagram.
Can I ask you a question?
Of course.
Do you have anything in mind as far as tutorials go? Like what you think might be something that you'll be doing?
Usually what I do when we do knit alongs is I just go through the pattern step by step and video techniques. So for example, people will not be able to knit the sweater simply by watching the tutorial, because obviously they'll have to have the numbers, stitch counts, and for their specific size. And obviously I would never do that. I would never want to make a tutorial where people can knit something without having to buy the pattern, because that's not cool. It is not respectful to the designer. We would never do that. So we will cover, like, if there's short rows in the beginning, we'll cover, well, how do you do that? What is the technique for that? And then how do you do the increases for the raglan? And we'll just cover techniques as we go along. How do you separate for the sleeves? How do you,
No,
how
it sounds
I
great. Yeah.
things that I like to do for keeping track of rows, for example, because after you knit the first sleeve, like I don't really want to go back and count all that. Although if you're doing a 6-row stripe, that'd be pretty easy, you know. So just techniques basically, and then like what kind of bind off you'll
You
use.
disclosing the pattern. I was just curious
Yeah.
what you might be offering that I then don't have to respond to. If there's
Well, and I'll make an effort. And often people will just comment on the video. If they have a question, they'll just comment on the video itself. And then, I'll go back and answer it. And if it's something that I can't answer, then I'll be like, "Oh, I don't know, let's ask Heidi." Yeah.
sounds good. Yeah, that
Yeah. You
sounds
shouldn't have to do a lot of hand holding. Yeah, no. So that's my job. But if people, if I get stumped, then I'll reach out to you and be like, we need your help. Come over here and answer this person.
be happy to. Yeah, no problem.
Excellent. Yeah. Is there anything that you can think of that maybe I should include that maybe I would have overlooked? You could always message me if
Yeah, I mean, there aren't really that many like complicated techniques. Although, if for new knitters, there are enough techniques. Like you said, the increases and decreases. I guess picking up stitches. That's something that people sometimes struggle with, and that's you need to do that for the neckline at the end. That said, it's really easy to undo it and try again. If it looks ugly, just try again, right? Until it's not a ton of knitting or anything. But that might be something that might be helpful.
Yeah. And I imagine you pick up a couple underneath the arm.
Yeah, like when you start knitting the sleeves, then you pick up from where you cast on
Right.
for
Right.
the body, and
Yeah.
then
And so
you might,
I'll show that on camera, like how I'm
yeah,
going to go about that. And then, you know, and if you do end up with a little tiny hole, how you'd mitigate that. And,
yeah, sounds great,
cool.
awesome.
All right. Well, again, thanks for taking time to join me. It's always
Yeah,
fun. It's always fun to meet the person with the brilliance behind the pattern. I love that.
well, I hope you still feel that way after you knit it. But
It has like 900 and something projects. It's a well-loved pattern. I'm
yeah.
sure we will love it.
Well, thanks. Yeah, so thanks again for inviting me to
Yeah,
chat
of
with you. It was
course.
nice to meet you as well, and yeah, have fun with the knit along.
Thank you.